Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's SEO.com webinar. We have a great presentation planned today. I hope I sound okay. Please let us know if you're having any sound issues or production issues, and we'll hop right on those. I have a great presentation today prepared by SEO.com SEO Director Clay Stokes. I'm excited to get right into it. It's about how to use web analytics to improve website conversion. And we're going to get right into it. We're going to have a nice, concise presentation for you today, too. The last few webinars, they may have gone a little long. And so we know that everybody has a busy day and you don't have a lot of time to devote to these, and we're happy that you come and visit us. So we're going to get right into it today. Now, there's a few different ways to participate in the webinar. You can use the GoToWebinar chat room to send us questions, comments. Let us know, if you have any type of feedback whatsoever, even if you think we're wrong about something. We'd love to hear criticism even. Hit us up in the GoToWebinar chat room. Tweet us at SEO.com or use the SEO webinar hashtag. And just so you know, we are recording today's webinar. The slides will be online tomorrow and the recording early next week. Now, before I get into the webinar today, I want to tell you a little bit about SEO.com. SEO.com is a search marketing agency that increases your online visibility to help customers find your business easier. Search engine optimization benefits any company interested in surging sales, whether you're a small business, nonprofit organization, a Fortune 500 company. SEO.com can help. To learn more about what SEO.com can do for your business, visit SEO.com. You can enter your company URL in the provided field and then click Go, and you'll receive a free instant website report from SEO.com for you to review. All right, let's get started. Again, I've mentioned that we have Clay Stokes with us today. He's the Director of SEO at SEO.com, and I'm going to let Clay tee up his presentation and tell you a little bit about what he's going to be talking about. Thanks a lot for being with us, Clay.
Thanks, Pat. Not a whole lot of introduction needed. We're going to talk about using analytics for conversion. So keep in mind, I'm not really talking about landing page optimization here. I'm talking about specifically reports we can look at in Google Analytics, stats, metrics that we look at in analytics that can help us improve conversion optimization. So I'm not talking about calls to action or copy or anything like that. This is all analytics. So if you're an analytics geek or if you want to learn more about analytics, I think you'll really enjoy it. So let's get started. We're going to start really high level at first, and then I'll be drilling down throughout the webinar. So first up, we can't track what we're not measuring on our websites, and it's incredible to me. It's 2012. People have been using Google Analytics now. At least most websites that have been in business for several years have also had Google Analytics on their website, and we work with a lot of new websites that don't have any goals set up. They're not tracking any sort of conversion or form submission or anything like that. Or those that are typically just stick with the contact form or with the main lead generation form, but they're not tracking all the other touch points where visitors perceive value basically from our websites and from our companies. And so that might be, various form submissions. Downloads are a great indicator that people are finding your content worthwhile. They're downloading it. They're consuming it. If you're a shopping cart and you have a wish list or you have a product comparison feature or something like that, we need to be tracking those things. We're tracking by default when a user, let's say, goes from an About Us page to a Contact Us page. We can see that. We're tracking it because it's just a default metric that Google Analytics gives us, but there's no value in that compared to the value that we see that people are actually using product compares. What products are they comparing against each other? What are they adding to wish lists? Because those are all great leading indicators into revenue and actual sales down the road. So if you have any of these features on your site, and there are dozens and dozens, I don't know, hundreds more potential items that you can be tracking on your website. On our own blog, we actually track comments. We even track when people click on a comment and they're taken away from the site. All kinds of things like that give us a lot of great insight. And if you have a multi-step form, for example, that form that you saw on our second slide, the about SEO.com that showed our homepage, that's a multi-step form. And so we have events and we're tracking, okay, they filled out the first step and made it to 2. How many people didn't make it to 3, or how many did make it to the 3rd step, and so on. There's a lot of value there in increasing the leads coming in. A few more high-level topics. If there is a $sign on your website, then use e-commerce tracking. Even if you're not an e-commerce website, like you'll see at the bottom, Nissan, you can't go buy a Nissan car off of their website, obviously, but they do have, just like most car manufacturers, they do have a build a car function where they can go in, they customize a car, they get it sent to the local dealership for an order, and they track that with e-commerce tracking. So, you know, they're looking at it and it says revenue. They know it's not revenue. They know that they're just looking at potential revenue and what people are seeing on the site. But that doesn't matter. They're seeing what types of features people are adding most to cars through their website. They're seeing which makes and models and colors of their cars are being are most sought after by their consumers. And those are great stats to have. And, you know, a few other examples that we have websites that we work with where people maybe they have flooring samples or tile samples or something where, you know, they're ordering it. It's not really anything that you're charging them for, but you can assign dollar amounts to those, or if there are other types of product inquiries of any kind.
While I'm sure we have some SEO geeks, for lack of a better word, in the crowd, we probably also have some business owners for whom this isn't very familiar information. And so please, I know it's kind of complex, so please don't hesitate to send us in your questions, send us in your feedback via the chat room, the GoToWebinar chat room, tweet us at SEO.com, or use the SEO webinar hashtag on Twitter. Sorry, Clay, just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, please ask questions. We'd love that. So, you know, speaking of event tracking, I want to just lay out for anyone who's not familiar with it exactly how it works. Like I mentioned before, one of the many stats that we watch on our own site is when people are actually posting comments. That's actually an important initiative of ours this year, is to get more reader engagement and more community involvement on our blog, and being able to see how many comments are being posted in a given month and how that's trending is really valuable to us. So we'll take a button like the post comment button after someone's typed it out. That's the button they would click to publish the comment. We put some code on it, and what you want to pay attention to is what's in green, where you see on click, a little bit of JavaScript code, skip, but stay with me, all the way to comment. That's the category, and you can name this whatever you want. And so this is what we decided to name our post comment button with. We're calling it the comment button. The next field, submit, that's the action field. That's basically, you know, there could be, I don't know, comment, someone clicked on a comment or someone submitted a comment. So those could be 2 different actions under the category comment. And then title of post is a kind of a placeholder label where how valuable would that be to actually look at your comment report and see which posts right from analytics get the most comments, when those comments came in on a timeline, what days comments come in the most, or what times of day, things like that could help us decide when we want to be posting and doing promotion for our blog posts. And the result is when you hop into Google Analytics, this is what you see. You see all of the you know, comments. There is our number 2 event. You can see how many comments were made during that particular time period. A few other things. So if you're versed in analytics at all, then you're definitely familiar with the name Avinash. Avinash is he's an analytics guru. He's basically the guru. He spoke at SES Toronto last week and gave some really great tips. So I'm going to give him full credit for what I borrowed from his talk, mainly because I love them so much, and I'll even quote him later. But one thing that he really emphasized was that certain metrics that we look at all the time in analytics aren't going to help us improve conversion at all. If we're looking at visits, if we're looking at page views or pages per visit, those things aren't going to help us improve conversion. They can help us improve user experience or see what marketing methods are working out well, so that we're spending our money on the right initiatives, but they won't help conversion. And then the worst of all is that question that I get all the time, which is, what is a good conversion rate for a website, or what would be a good conversion rate for my website? And that's a terrible question to ask, because it depends on so many factors, ranging from, well, how much do your products cost compared to a competitor, or what industry are you in, what kind of a website do you have? There are a lot of factors, and there's no golden conversion rate. The only good answer to that question is basically what is the question being, what is a good conversion rate? Is the only answer is a better one.
This is going to sound really basic based on what you've been saying so far, but do we need to step back and do you need to maybe explain what you mean by conversion rate? Or
yeah, that might not be a bad idea.
Just briefly.
Yeah. So it's a marketing and sales term. Conversion meaning converting a potential customer to a buying customer, basically. So if you're an e-commerce site, then a conversion is when someone actually completes a transaction and buys a product. You might also count a lead generation form, submission as a conversion, or any number of things on a site. Any action that you want users to take on your site.
Thanks,
can be
Clay.
a conversion when that's successful. Yeah. Here are some metrics that will help. So mainly knowing what your current conversion rate is, but knowing it in context, because just looking at your global conversion rate, let's say it's 1.5% of all traffic visits your site and converts. That doesn't really tell you anything until you dive in, and I'll show you some charts in a later slide. But until you dive in and you see, well, okay, so PPC has a 3% conversion rate, and maybe my organic is taking that conversion rate down, or vice versa, or email isn't converting well, or what have you. So you want to look at your traffic in a meaningful way and look at it in context. Where are they coming from? How does your conversion rate vary among different channels? How has it fluctuated in the past? Maybe when you were running deals on your website, or promotions, or other things, or maybe had a website redesign of some kind. And a few more things. I'll be diving into each one of these in more detail throughout the webinar, but analyze your top and your worst performing landing pages. See why those that perform well do perform the way that they do, and why others don't. Site speed is really critical. I mean, people are touting it more and more in SEO as an important factor, but I'll talk a little bit later about how important site speed is in conversion as well. The lifetime of a sale is really important to know and to watch, and meaningful touch points that lead to sales. And of course, there's the usual things that if you're familiar with conversion optimization, then people are usually looking at bounce rate and exit rate and conversion rate, things like that.
Clay, would you like to take a question about bounce rate right now? Or
sure.
You perhaps for the benefit of some, you may want to briefly explain bounce rate when you're answering the question. However, Ellie is in the crowd, and Ellie asks, what is the average bounce rate for a website which provides B2B services and B2C services?
So that was not a whole lot. It's not terribly far off from the, what's a good conversion rate or what is an average or something like that, just because it totally depends. Knowing a little more context helps a little bit. First of all, for anyone that isn't familiar with the term bounce rate, that's any visitor that lands on any given page on your website and then leaves your website without having continued on to another page. So they've only visited one page one time and then left the website after that. That's a bounce rate. So for a B2B, bounce rates can typically be pretty high. Mainly, though, I would fault that to a lot of B2B websites are pretty bland and pretty brochure-like, and you can arrive on the home page, and then maybe there are 5 or 6 other pages, so there's not a lot of other places to go. And so some ways to improve that bounce rate would be, telling them about a great resource on another page, or inviting them to a call to action somehow that leads them into other pages on your site and intrigues them and makes them want to move to other pages. As far as an average, that's kind of hard to say. I mean, usually for B2B, I'm used to seeing anything from a 50 to a 70% bounce rate. But
wow,
again,
is that hot? That's high. It sounds like.
yeah, it's pretty high. It's above average, I would say. Most websites hang around. A 30 is amazing. A 40 is really good. 50 is kind of middle of the road and whatnot. But then again, that just depends on what your website is, who's your audience, where are they coming from, what's bringing them to your website. There are a lot of factors that go into that, so it's kind of a hard question to give a blanket answer to.
Great.
But good question, though. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds like it. And just one quick, really more of a clarification from Garth. Garth says, I assume all of these suggestions can be done with Google Analytics. Is that true?
Yes, that is true. Yeah, everything in the presentation, yeah, it's all based on Google Analytics. I'm not talking so much about, landing page specific items like, you need to make your calls to action bigger and orange or whatever. I'm not talking about typical landing page conversion or conversion optimization. I'm keeping it strictly to what can we see and analyze in Google Analytics and then use as a basis for making decisions and creating action items for ourselves that can improve conversion from analytics alone. Good question.
Thanks for the feedback. We'll move on, but let's answer Angie's question. Will you talk about new versus the old version of analytics?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So I was the new version of Google Analytics biggest fan for about 7 or 8 months until probably February, March, and April when they started removing a lot of features from this new version. Because at first I could see you could get into all sorts of data. There were no limits on filters and ways that you could sort that data. And since then, they've really watered it down. My guess is, that's just a tactic to get you to pay for their new paid version of Google Analytics that's at a competitive price with Omniture, fairly expensive, which is unfortunate. And so really to get a lot of that data now, I've had to rely on some APIs to get some statistics that are just impossible or really hard to get to now.
Wow.
For the most part, I do enjoy it, though. I mean, it's better looking. It's a little faster. I don't like that they have data sampling. So if you have over a certain amount of traffic in a month, I think it's around 250,000 visitors, they use data sampling and just sample about 30% of your traffic, do the math and give you ranges instead of telling you exactly how many visitors and conversions and things you're getting on your website. So those are a couple factors that I don't like about it. But overall, it's always improving and it's a little faster. The graphs look better, and they have some cool email reporting functionality in the works that I really like.
Good stuff, Clay. Let's move on.
Yeah, so that's the big broad view. So moving on to conversion rate. Again, I just wanted to restate, don't pay much attention to your global conversion rate. It's not nearly as important as looking at your conversion rate in context. So what's your conversion rate for users that land on blog articles versus your conversion rate for people that land straight on a product page or on a service page? Diving in and looking at your conversion rate in context is much more valuable. How do new visitors convert versus repeating and returning visitors? I have a screenshot down below of SEO.com. We actually get twice the conversion rate, essentially, with returning visitors that we do with new visitors. And that, in turn, means that we need to make a lot of decisions. That says we've got to make put a priority on touch points with our visitors after they leave our site the first time. They're not done. We're actually more likely to convert them if they come back to our site, which means we need to work on email, we need to work on retargeting, we need to work on social in any way that we can to stay in front of these people after they've left our site the first time to bring them back, because we statistically convert them at a much, much higher rate.
Fascinating.
And again, blog readers versus visitors that land on your services and product pages, they're coming to your site for entirely different reasons. So it doesn't make any sense to average those two conversion rates for those two completely different types of visitors and look at your global conversion rate that way. It all depends on what's your initiative. Are you blasting out emails? Then what's your email conversion rate and how can you improve that? Are you working on SEO and organic traffic? What's your conversion rate there? across different types of pages, and how can that be improved. Here I've broken down a few incoming channels, all organic and paid search, and you can see, goal conversion rate for Yahoo versus Google paid versus Google organic, and so on. And so what you want to do with that is then ask the questions, so what landing pages are ranking so well in Yahoo, and why are they converting at such a higher rate than what we're seeing with Google visitors, and why aren't our cost per click visitors converting at a higher rate? Because that's one of the few segments of our traffic that we can control entirely. We're controlling those keywords, and so if they're coming in and they're not converting at the same rate as organic, which includes people that we happen to have an image that ranks really well for the word ghost, that actually consumes quite a bit of our traffic on SEO.com for some strange reason, and that's organic traffic, and it pulls our conversion rate down for organic and whatnot. Our cost per click should definitely be higher than that organic traffic rate, because we control that traffic. And so we'll want to take a look at what we're doing, what we're seeing in our ads, what keywords we're using, what keyword stop words we're using to bring in that traffic and get a higher conversion rate.
Hey, thanks everyone for submitting your questions. We're getting several questions, and I think I'm going to hold off on the questions for just a few more minutes. I'm going to let Clay continue with his presentation. We'll be able to get to all of the questions at the end. So thanks again. Thanks for your feedback, and just be patient. We'll get to your question in just a few minutes.
Yeah, keep them coming, and I'll try to breeze through the rest of my slides so we have plenty of time for Q&A. This is one of my favorite parts of the webinar as I was putting my slides together, which is landing page analysis. I'll show you some actual reports in the next couple slides. But you can get a lot of really valuable data by looking at your top converting landing pages and comparing them against your worst converting landing pages and asking lots of questions about them. Why are they converting so well? Where are they coming from? Why did they click on that keyword? What was the user intent behind arriving on these landing pages that convert well versus the traffic that comes to our landing pages that don't convert well? You can start to build a list of best practices from all your best converting top landing pages, and you can also raise the bar for your worst converting pages by integrating some of those best practices there as well. Again, segment your content so you're comparing apples to apples. So don't just go to the landing page report, sort by highest conversion rate to lowest conversion rate. You need to do some segmenting first and look at, okay, PPC landing pages. What's my highest converting PPC landing page? Okay, how about blog articles or my product pages or my category pages? Compare apples to apples, and you'll start to get into some really good stuff. And why does my shoes category page convert at such a higher rate than my shirts page when it's essentially the same sort of product, price range, and everything?
I can see why you like this so much. This is really exciting, a really exciting topic.
Yeah. If you're detail oriented like me, like numbers and things like that, this stuff is a lot of fun. So here's a little how-to. So the first step is go to that content landing pages report in Google Analytics. I like to click the advanced filter and use that to segment some traffic on the fly. You can set up what's called advanced filters that Google Analytics will save for you up at the top of the page to easily come back and keep sorting. But if you're ever just doing something quick, the advanced filter is really, really handy, and I recommend getting familiar with it. So segment them in a useful way. As you can see down below, these are the rules that I built into the advanced segment. So I'm saying include all landing pages containing blog in the URL. That's because all of our blog posts are contained in our /blog directory on SEO.com. And I'm also putting in a minimum number of visits to keep the data statistically relevant, because you might have a page with 2 visits and 2 conversions with a 100% conversion rate, and that's not going to be terribly valuable to look at compared to pages that get some real traffic. So I do that by, on the next line, saying and include only visits that are greater than 50. So I'm only looking at landing pages with more than 50 visits, and you can set that number wherever you feel It allows you to compare similar pages in terms of visits and volume. And then once you get to that once you hit apply, the report will refresh and it'll look something like this, where you can sort by your goal conversion rate and start to see some really cool stuff. You can see here all of our top landing pages on our blogs. I should rephrase that. All of our top converting landing pages on our blog are some of our highest quality content that we've ever produced on the blog. The first 7 SEO experts to avoid, that one went incredibly viral for some reason in the SEO community. And to this day, it's been up for a year, maybe 2. To this day, it's one of our highest traffic pages. Title tag SEO tips, that's kind of a resource page. So that's something to note down. People love resources on our blog. Let's create more of those. And a few others. We have some infographics that rank really well, some recent Penguin type posts that are topical, so we need to keep topical posts coming. Those are all action items and takeaways that you can take just by glancing at this report, and then get started with your editorial calendar and start building similar content. I already kind of went through these takeaways, so I won't spend much time on this slide, but inspect and record those best practices and pay attention to why they are performing well and why they might not be.
Now the slides will be available tomorrow. We'll post those at SEO.com. We'll post those on the webinar registration page at SEO.com. Early next week, there will be a recording posted at SEO.com, so you can go back and revisit this webinar at your convenience, and we hope you do.
So let's talk about site speed. Avinash dropped this one last week. He said, for every second slower your site loads, conversion rate drops 7%.
That's an awesome stat.
Yeah,
man.
can you imagine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds gets all the way up to, you can see this stat here that Wisconsin visitors for some reason have an average page load time of 15% or 15 seconds. Sorry, too many numbers flying past me in this webinar. It takes 15 seconds on average in Wisconsin. The darker states are all kind of the slower states for this particular website. It's definitely worth looking into and seeing how we can fix that, especially if they're coming from an important state. You can see that New York is a pretty dark state considering the population there, and some attention should probably be put there. I looked at our own bounce rate to get a look at how many people just leave our site after it's taken 5 seconds to load. And so I looked at the bounce rate for pages that load in less than 5 seconds and pages that take more than 5 seconds to load. And the difference is that it's 16% greater for visitors that have to sit around and wait more than 5 seconds for their pages to load. So it's really significant from a conversion standpoint. Users on the internet are not, they're very impatient, and they have things to do, and they're used to websites loading in a split second. So pay close attention to site speed, if not from an SEO standpoint, then from a user experience and conversion standpoint for sure. Here's another client that I was looking at that for some reason Firefox is loading their pages incredibly slowly compared to everything else. Everything else has a pretty good average page load time, but something's going on with Firefox that's worth looking into. So let's talk about lifetime of a sale. As you can see here, these are 3 completely different websites, and you can see how different it is. From one website that has really low-cost items that are the type of items that their users would just appear on the site, buy it while they're there, and take off, versus some others that have really expensive products, multiple thousands of dollars. And when you're spending that much money on the web, it's usually not a, oh, I just arrived at this site. Yeah, I'll drop $2,000 and buy this piece of equipment or what have you. It usually takes a little more time. So the first one at the top, you can see that 80% of their traffic converts that same day, and this is 80% of all people that bought something on their website. And the second, only 60%, and the third, 47%. The takeaways here are that first slide, they need to work on the science of getting the right traffic to their site, because all they got to do is get the right traffic to their site. They'll buy that day and they're done. The second and third slides have a little more work cut out for them. They've got to work on outreach and getting back in front of these people after the first time they visited their site. Retargeting is a great way to do that, so that after the first time they visited your site, they start seeing your banner ads all over the place as they're on Yahoo or wherever they are. Social is a great way to stay in front of them. If you can get them to, at least like you while they're on your site the first time, start watching you in social channels, then that's gold for these types of businesses and websites, so you can stay in front of those users. Email marketing, newsletters, whatever you can do to stay in front of them.
We have just a few slides left, and I encourage everyone to send in your questions. We're going to have a healthy Q&A when Clay wraps this up in just a few minutes. So please send in your questions. You can use the chat room, the GoToWebinar chat room. You can use Twitter. You can tweet us at SEO.com, or you can use the SEO webinar hashtag. All right, thanks. Fire those questions off.
Thanks. So if you're in one of those buckets where you care about your returning traffic and it takes people more than a day or two to convert, then here are a few clever ideas that you could integrate on your site to enhance the user experience for them. First of all, make sure that your cookie life matches your visitors. So if you're saving cookies to remember what they left in your cart, don't let them expire in a day if it usually takes visitors a week to convert on your site. Make sure that's your cookie life is appropriate. And then use those cookies to remember when people come back and give them an interactive experience when they arrive back on the site to say, hey, you left this item in the cart. Why don't you go check it out? Here's a 10% discount, whatever you want to do. Make it a little more interactive and let them know that you remember them and you remember their habits, and they don't have to log in again. They don't have to find the product again. Everything's saved. And then, watch the behavior and touch points of users that take more than a few days. Look at, those touch points might be social, they might be PPC or email, which ones are working well, and turn those up when they're working well, and for something that isn't, reallocate those funds or that time and effort. Some great ways to look at the meaningful touch points. I love the multi-channel funnels report that is new in this version of Google Analytics, and it's one of the coolest new additions. And it lets you group your highest performing channels, basically. So we can see that for this particular website, direct was the most influential, followed by organic search, and referral, and other, and social network. It lets you look at the value of each touch point over time. So if it takes a week, again, for someone to make a purchase on your website, take a close look at, in this case, social network seems to be a lot more effective than email or display. And so I would move, give a little more priority to social networks in this particular case, or look at ways to improve those other channels because they're not performing well right now. Final takeaways, consider putting more focus on paid search or organic search or email or other channels that help. They might not be the first channel that brought a visitor to your site, but there's a lot of value there if you need to stay in front of them to keep them coming back. And again, that's going to be most impactful for customers that take more than a day to purchase. And that wraps it up for me. Let's move into questions.
Great. We're going to take some questions. A lot of people have submitted questions already, and there's still time to submit questions, so please submit those questions via the GoToWebinar chat room, or use Twitter. Tweet us at SEO.com, or use the SEO webinar hashtag for your tweets. Let's get to some of these questions. We've got some really good ones. I appreciate everybody being with us today. Let's start with kind of a general one. I don't want to put you on the spot with this one, Clay. Ellie asks, what is the difference between Google Analytics and Omniture?
There are a lot of differences. Omniture is a little more robust. I would say that out of the box, their user interface isn't quite as easy for the average person to just log in and use and get value from it. Omniture has extensive training programs that people take. I think the shortest way to put it is just that if you can afford it, go with Omniture or Google Analytics paid version, because it's awesome, and it lets you bend the data and export the data in any way that you want, and lets you customize the way that you track people. So Google Analytics right now, you just throw the script on your site, and it has a set way of how it tracks everyone, and there's some customization and some custom variables you can put in place, but Omniture lets you completely customize everything that you're tracking, how it's labeled, how it's reported in a dashboard. It's really cool.
Great. Now, coincidentally, I believe we have two questions in a row that may relate to each other. Can I give you both these questions, Clay, and you can decide if you want to combine the answer?
Sure.
Okay, JJ asks, with the paid version of analytics, are you able to see the visits from the people that currently show as not provided, quote unquote? And then Ellie, with her question, just a few minutes later, she says 51% of my website traffic is coming from the keyword, and then in parentheses, not provided. What does it mean?
Good questions. So first off, no, I don't believe the new version will include that, but there is some speculation that it will eventually. Right now, Google's not. The only reason Omniture and Google Analytics could ever see that data in the first place was because Google was passing along that keyword because it was in the URL string when you made the search. And so then when you arrived on that next page on the website, when a person navigates from one page to another on the internet, they pass what's called a header, and in that header you can always see the URL that they were on before they came to the current page. So they would look at that URL and find the keyword in that URL somewhere and extrapolate it out. Google completely stopped using that for users that are logged in, and that answers the second question of what not provided is all about. Google used to just provide, every single keyword that people would search, but now as part of a privacy initiative, in order to keep personally identifiable information secure and private, if you're logged in, they're forcing you to use secure search, and just the nature of secure websites means that data can't be passed along. I think it's foreseeable that they could, because if anyone's a geek, and sorry if this goes over your head, but right now they're actually overriding your click. So if you click a search result, then you're not sent from the secure version of Google onto the website. You're actually going to a middleman URL that's non-secure on Google that has all the information they always passed along before, but not the keyword, and then you go to the site. So they could pass it along if they wanted to, but the idea there is if you're logged in to, say, your Google Plus account, your URL can be used to identify you as a person, and so people could start to see that that Joe Hansen arrived on my website because he was searching for my CEO's name and he's some weird stalker. I don't know, it's against Google's terms of service and against a lot of privacy initiatives to see that personally identifiable information in analytics. And the unfortunate side effect is that in the SEO industry, we're losing our keywords, and it's just going to keep getting worse. 50% is really high, but unfortunately, it's just going to keep getting worse.
Excellent. I hope that answers your questions. Thanks, everyone, for the great feedback. We have another question here. We have one more question. We still have time for more questions, maybe just a few more minutes. So if anybody has a quick question they'd like to submit while Clay's answering this one, we'll be happy to take that if time permits. Okay. JJ is asking about one of your slides, Clay. He's asking about
Sure.
the slide, the days to conversion.
Yeah.
And he asks, how did you get those stats? How did you produce those stats, he asks.
Good question. So you'll go into Google Analytics. You'll go to, I might need to remind myself a little bit. I believe it's under the multi-channels. So you go to the conversions drop down. Under that, there's multi-channels. And under that, there should be a time lag report. I know it's called the time lag report. I might be wrong on the navigation and the sub-navigation to get there, but you want to look for the time lag report for that.
Great. Hey, thanks everyone for being here. It was a great webinar. I would say don't ever miss any SEO.com webinars. However, definitely don't miss a webinar when Clay is presenting. He usually really knocks them out of the park as he did today, and I appreciate all the information you've provided the audience, Clay.
You're welcome. It's been great. Thank you to everyone that attended, and hit me up on Twitter if you have questions or want to connect. I'd love it.
Looks like some of the audience members appreciated your feedback too. They're thanking you for your answers. So good job, Clay. Note the unusual spelling. Very unusual spelling, I think, of the name Clay. So if you're trying to get a hold of him, you're going to need to spell it correctly.
Yeah, that means I can get really cool URLs on Twitter and LinkedIn and everything that I sign up on. I always get an easy username.
Oh, yeah. You can also connect with SEO.com. Of course, visit SEO.com for all the latest information. Check out our blog. We're always blogging about the latest tips and trends. We're on Twitter, of course, at SEO.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on LinkedIn. And I want to mention the next webinar, just so you have the date. It's June 28th. We're going to be talking about local SEO. We've really been beefing up our local SEO efforts and program around here, so we can't wait to tell you all about it. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Do you want to take one more question, Clay? She got it in just under the mark here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good timing there. What is the best way to use the social tab in Google Analytics?
Best way to use the social tab. We have Doc shadowing over here in the corner. He would be the guy to ask about that. He's our social guy. Best way to use it is use that as a way to segment your traffic, to just look at how social visitors and social channels specifically are doing for you. And what's cool about the social report is they're starting to show when people +1 your posts, or when they like you on Twitter, or not like you on Twitter, like you on Facebook, tweet you on Twitter, things like that, so that you can see user engagement. Yeah. So to repeat Doc, because you probably couldn't hear him in the back. Social attribution is a huge way to use it as well. So you can see if social was the first channel that brought them to the site, or if it was a supporting channel that helped lead to conversion after their initial visit. Good question.
Great question. Thanks, everyone, for your questions and your feedback, and thanks for being here. And join us on June 28th for the next webinar. Have a great day.